Hello?
Yeah, Brickhouse.
How you doing, Andrew?
Glad you're here with us on the line and out for this interview. For a lot of fans that don't know, tell a lot of fans do know who you are, but a lot of fans, especially the newer generation that don't, tell them who Brickhouse Brown is.
Well, first of all, Andrew, I have wrestled every promotion that it was back when in the regional territories. A lot of people out there probably don't remember me, but a lot of the old school people probably do. But basically, I wrestled from California to Mike LaBelle, all the way from Paul Bosch with All-Star Wrestling out of Houston to Joe Blanchard, and Southwest Championship Wrestling is where I actually started at. And I went from Mid-South to Mid-Atlantic to Florida Championship Wrestling to Alabama to Continental Wrestling, every promotion except basically the East Coast, which the only promotion that I worked for in the East Coast was the WWF.
And who trained you, and what year did you break in?
I broke in 1982, but as far as being trained, no other wrestler in the wrestling business will ever get in the wrestling business the way Brickhouse did. I actually booked myself into the wrestling business.
Wow.
This guy in Florida by the name of Jerry Gray, he and I became very good friends. We worked out at Tampa Fitness Center, and a lot of the other wrestlers was working out there, like Jack Briscoe, Rocky Johnson, and they took a liking to me because I was always blessed to have a good body. And I got to become friends with Jerry Gray, and actually he told me where to get my boots and tights made, and I was smart enough to know from watching Southwest Championship Wrestling on USA Cable that they didn't have a black wrestler there. So I called up Bill Apter of Inside Wrestling magazine, and I sent him some 8x10s with me and my wrestling boots and tights, and asked him what he thought my chances were. And in turn, he sent me back some promoters' phone numbers and address. And of course, I sent Joe Blanchard an 8x10, and I lied on the back of the 8x10 because back then there were no tapes to send in, and we didn't have to have any DVDs that you could send in, and it was all 8x10s and word of mouth. And I lied to him and told him I had been wrestling with these little rinky-dink promotions like East Coast Wrestling, and I told him I'd been wrestling for 2 years. And to my surprise, he called me up and gave me a starting date, which was May 2nd, 1982 in San Antonio, Texas.
Wow.
And I'd never been trained. I actually started out being trained by Hiro Matsuda out of Tampa, but being ambitious and I didn't have enough patience, I decided to book myself and to see what would happen. And my first match, of course, was the semi-main event against Hangman Bobby Jaggers for the Southwest title, and I'd never had a match before.
And how did that match get over with the crowd?
Oh, my God. Andrew, well, needless to say, when they brought me in, Jack Briscoe, I can remember him telling me before I left, he goes, Fred, and that's my real name, he goes, Fred, remember, these guys put a lot of ribs on you in the wrestling business, so just beware of the ribs. And they had no idea that it was going to turn out the way it turned out. They thought it was going to be a big joke and a big kick for me to go to San Antonio and never have been trained before and actually start wrestling. I mean, I guess everybody wanted to see how that was going to play out. And, of course, the first night that I was in San Antonio, they didn't put me in the ring to see if I could work. They only had me do a TV interview. And as my degree is in communications, so I could always talk. And I can remember my very first interview, I said a generic interview. I said, I'm glad to be here in Southwest Championship Wrestling, and I'm only going all the way up north. I'm going to be driving up the north, going straight to the top. And I'm just glad to be here, and I hope all you people like what I do. And I can remember saying that, and they thought that it was just a good generic interview, but they didn't put me in the ring at all. I wrestled the next night, though, in the semi-main event against Bobby Jaggers. And when Steve Sachs, the referee, the ring announcer, came backstage to tell me to finish, which was a simple finish, they were going to try to establish me. He said, you're going out with Bobby Jaggers, and Don Carson is going to be out at ringside. And he said, when it's time to go home, he said, we will sent a bunch of guys out, and he said, can you do a drop kick? Well, from watching wrestling on the TV, I knew what a drop kick was, which I'd never thrown one in my life. And I told him, I said, yeah, I can do a drop kick. He said, well, we're going to make you a drop kick specialist. You're going to drop kick everybody that we send to the ring, and eventually they'll get you down, and we'll send some baby faces out and make the save. And that's how we'll get out of the match with a DQ. And we're going to start a program with you and Bobby Jaggers for the belt. He said, you got it? And I looked up at him, and what Jack Briscoe had told me before I left, that bell went off in my head. Ding, 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 ding. I said, this must be one of those reels that Jack was telling me about. They want me to go out here and look stupid and let this guy do all of this to me. So naturally, I looked at him and I said, yeah, I got it. But I had other ideas in my head, which was to go out and actually try to win the Southwest title. And that's exactly what I went out and tried to do. Because I wrestled in high school, I won the state 3 years straight, and then I wrestled in college. I wrestled in Auburn, which we didn't have a real wrestling team because we would always get our butts kicked when we competed against people like Michigan and Utah. Those were wrestling colleges. So we would always get our butts kicked because those guys wrestled all year round, where we only wrestled seasonal, and our record would be when we would go to the finals would be like my record would be like 10-2, and you would post your record up, and those other guys from Utah and Kansas and Minnesota would be like 20-3 and 50, and because that's all they did was wrestle. But
so were you saying you were trying to win the titles, like you were going to shoot, or you weren't smart enough, is what you're saying?
I wasn't smart at all. I thought it was a shoot. I was going in to try to win the Southwest belt from Bobby Jaggers. And you got to understand, I had been watching the wrestling because Southwest Championship Wrestling was like the first syndicated wrestling show on USA Cable, way before WWE, way before World Class Wrestling, way before World Championship Wrestling out of Dallas. Southwest Championship Wrestling was the first syndicated wrestling show to go national. And I would see Bobby Jaggers hanging people with that hangman noose and hitting people with that cowbell. So I had in my mind that I was going to go in and wrestle this big guy and take him down, put him in a chicken wing or a sugar hole, and actually take the belt.
Wow.
Now, the match itself was horrible because the first time when I locked up with Bobby Jaggers, he called a simple spot. It was so simple you couldn't mess it up if you tried. He called one tackle, drop down, get it again. And which a lot of people are smart now to the language that we talk in the wrestling ring. So he goes to shoot me off, and I had a shoot headlock on him, which is what I learned in high school and college. And when he tried to shoot me off, I wouldn't cooperate. I wouldn't budge. As a matter of fact, I was cinched down on that headlock even tighter. And he started getting frustrated and pissed off at me. He goes, one tackle, drop down, get it again. And he tried to shoot me off, and I wouldn't budge, Andrew. I kept it on even tighter. And finally he got so pissed, he goes, one tackle, drop down, and get it a freaking again. And I said, why should I do what you say when this headlock is working so well? And I remember taking him over, and I went automatically for a double Jacobs. Well, a lot of people that follow amateur wrestling would know what that is, and it's just a shoot hold that is like a double arm bar. And I remember applying that so much to Bobby Jaggers, and he just started squealing like a pig. And I thought to myself, I said, man, this is easier than I thought. I'm actually going to win this belt. And Jack Ham, the referee, he came over to me, and he goes, Brickhouse. By that time, Joe Blanchard had gave me the name Brickhouse Brown because he said, son, say your name out like you're getting ready to wrestle. And I go, from Winter Haven, Florida, 230 pounds, Frederick Seawright. He said, see, that sounds like a damn loser. He said, you're built like a brick, you know what house. And he said, we're going to call you Brickhouse. And I said, well, sir, I said, where I'm from, a brick house is recognized as a female. And I'll never forget that old white man looking at me and saying, well, Fred, whoever look at you will determine if you're a brick house. If a man look at you, then of course you're not a brick house. But he said, if a woman look at you, you can be a brick house. And think of something that goes with brick house. So we came up with Brown. And that's how I came up with the name Brickhouse Brown. But anyway, Jack Ham came in and he said, Brickhouse, he said, what are you doing? I said, what do you think I'm doing? I'm trying to win this belt. You should be trying to see if he's ready to give up. And he goes, Brickhouse, he said, no, this is all set up. This is all scripted. He said, what are you doing? Are you smart? And Andrew, I thought the man insulted me. I said, smart? I said, I just graduated out of Auburn University. Where the hell did you graduate from? And he said, no, Brick. He said, this is all set up. And by that time, they knew I wasn't smart because Bobby Jaggers was still squealing like a pig because I wouldn't let the hole go. And he told me, he said, Brickhouse, Don Carson is going to come in the ring and nail you in the back of the head. Whatever you do, just don't get up. Because by that time, Andrew, he wanted me to get out of the match any kind of way that they could have, and he was going to ring the bell once Don Carson came in the ring.
Right.
Well, with me not being trained, I didn't know anything about selling. So when Don Carson came in the ring and nailed me in the back of the head with the gimmick, of course he threw a working punch, so I thought that was the best punch that he had, and I stood up because I knew nothing about selling, and I go, that's the best you got. And I said, let me show you how to do a punch. And I threw a punch, and I hit him squarely in the jaw, and he dropped that gimmick and rolled out of the ring and ran back to the dressing room. And I can remember him looking back, and I remember these words distinctly. He said, Bobby, he said, you're on your own, and ran back to the dressing room. But Jack Ham was able to ring the bell anyway for outside interference.
I suppose that's the night they smartened you up. Do you think that they picked that night to finally say, hey, kid, come over here, we got to tell you something. The business...
Well, Andrew, they already thought I was smart before I went in. I'm the one that was thinking that they was pulling the rib on me. So they thought I was smart when they gave me the finish because I agreed to everything that Steve Sack had suggested to me. He said, this is the finish, kid, which I didn't have any idea what he was talking about drop kicking and nailing somebody in the head and that we're going to send the heels. I didn't know what a heel was. If he would have said bad guy, I would have known. But you got to forget, I didn't go through any training at all, none. And when I walked back to the dressing room, I was very disappointed that he had disqualified the match because I couldn't win the belt then. But I was very happy with the results of it because I said, now I showed everybody what I can do. And I'm getting ready to go back here and have this big after party and sign this big, huge contract. And the confetti is going to fall, and we're going to pop the champagne bottles, and everything's going to be great. I'm going to make millions of dollars, and I'm ready to do this. So when I walked in the dressing room, you got to remember, all of these guys for a month had been plugging me on the TV, trying to build me up to get me some steam behind me before I even went to San Antonio.
Right.
And every week somebody would say, yeah, you got this black superstar coming in here, Brickhouse Brown, and I would be sitting at home in my mom's living room marking out saying, they're talking about me. And and when I walked in the dressing room, Andrew, I actually thought that the confetti was going to fall and they were going to pop the champagne bottles and I was going to sign a big, huge contract. But when I went in, the guys looked like they just didn't know what to say, and they started filing out of the dressing room. And finally, Joe Blanchard walked over to me as I was unlacing those brand-new wrestling boots that I never wore, except for in my backyard when I was practicing on the mattress. And he goes, kid, how long did you say you were in the business? And I go, well, sir, because I actually thought I did great, Andrew. I said, you're not going to believe this, and you're going to find this amazing, but that was my first match. And he goes, what? I go, oh, yeah, I know that's hard to believe, but I actually thought I had done great. I didn't know I stumped the place out, And he said, that was your what? I said, yeah, I told you I'd been wrestling 2 years just so you could bring me in, and I would be able to show you what I can do. But now that I'm here and you've seen what I can do in my first match, bring the contract out because I'm ready to sign. Where do I sign? And he said, hold that thought. So he called all the guys back in the dressing room, and they came back in, and he said, now tell these guys what you just told me. And this is a true story, Andrew, and I stood up, and I actually thought that that's when the confetti was going to fall. And I told them, I said, guys, y'all going to find this hard to believe, But that was my first match. And I thought everybody was going to go just bonkers and go, man, that was great. That was fantastic. But nobody said a damn thing. And Joe Blanchard looked at me. He said, man, I don't know whether to have these guys kick your butt or shake your hands because it took a lot of guts to do what you did. He said, looking at you, he said, we're going to have you down to the junction every day because you're built like a Brickhouse. And he said, I think we can make some money off of you. And he said, not to make this a total bust, he said, have your butt down to the junction every day, and we're going to train you and see if we can salvage this and make some money off you. So every day I would go down to the junction, and it would be Eric Embry, it would be Terry Funk, it would be Skip Young, and some of the local guys. Tully would come down, Bob Sweetan. So I got actually trained by so many different people that I didn't have one style of coming in wrestling. I mean, everybody took a hand on training me because they thought that I had the potential to actually make something of myself, which I was very fortunate, Andrew, back then to have actually survived that, because back when I broke in the wrestling business, you had all these guys around that had cauliflower ears and plugged noses. Those old timers like Gordon Nelson and Nelson Royal, wow. They would take you and they would break something on you and break you up real good, and especially if they thought your attitude sucked, and they would hurt you real good and cripple you so that you couldn't wrestle, and you would go back in the mark world and say, hey, that professional wrestling is some tough crap, man. I mean, you got to be a man to handle that. But luckily, everybody liked me, and they thought I had good potential, and they worked with me. And that's how I got in the wrestling business. Nobody else will ever get in the wrestling business like that again. And unfortunately, my ambition was just too good for my talent, because I actually thought that I was too good to be in Southwest Wrestling then, because once they started training me, they still didn't completely smarten me up. But Buddy Fuller came to the area once, and I heard that his son had a promotion in Alabama, Ron Fuller, and I talked to Buddy Fuller, and there again, just based on the way I look, he said, yeah, I can call Ron and tell him about you. He said, you got a good look, and I can tell him to give you a chance. And he said, give him a call in a few days and see what he work out with you. And that's exactly what I did, and they brought me into Pensacola. And Andrew, there again, based on the way I look, they put me in the semi-main event. I'll never forget it. They put me in a mask and called me Black Olympia. And I teamed with this guy, Jerry Stubb, Mr. Olympia, and they were calling us the Olympians. And the first match that I had there was against the Midnight Express, Norvell Austin and Dennis Condrey. Wow. Dennis Condrey and Norvell Austin were hot at that time. And basically, I was supposed to get, Mr. Olympia was supposed to do a heel turn on me and turn on me, and that's how they were going to get me from under the hood. But unfortunately, once I got in the ring and I started throwing those lefts and rights and throwing all those potatoes and stiffing everybody out, Dennis Condrey told me, he said, tag out. And once I tagged out, they kayfabed me the rest of the night. They wouldn't let me back in the ring. So I only got in the ring for about 5 minutes, Andrew, and then they kayfabed the tag on me the rest of the match. They didn't even go with the finish that was scheduled, man. They just left me out of the whole thing. So basically, I got tired of that, and I just hit the ring, and I just tore into Norvell Austin and Dennis Condrey, and I just screwed the match up. I really did. And once I got back to the dressing room, Bob Armstrong looked at me and said, son, he said, unfortunately, I'm going to have to finish you up tonight. No, he said, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. And he said, because you're not on the level that we need you to be on for the spot that we want you in. And I was so disappointed because it was my first notice. It was my first time getting a notice to be fired on any job that I had. And I was very disappointed. So to make a long story short, the last match that they had me in was in Dothan, Alabama, and it was for the Junior United States Champion. And at that time, Golden Boy Chick Donovan was the champion. So my mind told me, well, if I go in and win this belt, there's no way that they can fire me. I'm the Junior United States Champion, so they got to keep me booked. And that's exactly what I did that Saturday night. I actually went out. And won that belt from Chick Donovan. The poor Chick had no clue what was going on, and I was in there shooting with the poor guy, and he started trying to work. And I think basically I didn't beat him up or anything like that. He just didn't know what was going on, and I guess he thought it better not to just defend himself and just go with it. So basically, finally, he just laid down for me, and I won the belt. And when I walked past Bob Armstrong and Jimmy Golden and Robert Fuller, I waved that belt up in the air. I said, now I'm the Junior United States Heavyweight Champion, and you guys can't fire me now. You got to book me. And I walked back in the dressing room just happy, and I just thought I had really put one over on them. But when they came back in the dressing room, Bob Armstrong was pissed. He goes, what the hell are you doing? I told him exactly what I was doing. I said, I went out and won that belt because you gave me a 2 weeks notice. And I said, on the last night here, I won this belt. So I guess you're going to book me now. I'll be in Birmingham to defend this belt. I'll get Chick Donovan a rematch.
My goodness. Very unconventional way that you broke into business, and very unorthodox that you would go off script. This is something that a lot of fans have not seen, or they wouldn't be smart enough before the internet and all the magazines and things like this now, because you just went in there and pretty much shot on Chick Donovan and took the title off of him. Yes, I did. True story, and that can be documented, brother. Anything that I tell you people, just know this. It is the truth, because if it wasn't the truth, I would have been sued my ass off by now, and they would have taken me to court by now for slander and this and that. Everything that I tell the people about the celebrities that I've done drugs with, the celebrities that I've slept with, everything is true. I haven't told anything that wasn't false. I have told the truth on everything. And later on down the line, Andrew, like I said before, if people have really seen my shoot interviews, they will know that, I tell on myself as much. I've done drugs with the best. I've done drugs with Rick James. I've done drugs with Primetime Deion Sanders. I've done drugs with Michael Irvin when I was the Texas Heavyweight Champion. If you ask me, and I would. The tapes you're referring to is with High Spots, and you guys want to go on highspots.com, and you could order the DVDs from there. And you'll be talking a lot with us. I hope you would like to be a friend of the show and come on more with on our channel here on False Comeback, and you folks could also subscribe. All the fans could subscribe, and I'm sure they would love to listen to you more, because we actually got a lot of requests for you. And the thing is, I remember buying the shoot DVDs from High Spots a long time ago. I remember Michael sending me the DVDs, and I was just blown away by it. And and you have like so many more stories. You've been in the business for a long, long time. But talk about there was something you mentioned about Jerry Lawler. I don't know if you wanted to bring that up now, but there was something. Do you have any issues with Jerry Lawler?
Well, of course, right now, as far as the shoot concerned, Jerry Lawler is probably my biggest nemesis. Not only was he one of my biggest nemesis in wrestling, working angles and programs with him, but in real life, in the shoot, he is still my enemy even to this day. And right now, there are certain bookings that I can't be on because he has notified promoters that if you book Brickhouse, then I'm not going to show up. And
so he has blackballed you?
Well, not completely blackballed me, only on the independent circuit around Memphis. He can't blackball me anywhere else because a lot of people really don't give a damn what he said, because of the fact that when I go in the ring, like I said before, I'm one of the last of the old school that actually is built the same. I actually go in and work and wrestle like I did 10 years ago, and I actually still can do my same interviews because there hasn't been too many people in the wrestling business that can talk on the microphone as well as I can. Those guys, Stone Cold, Rock, I had to deal with those guys way before they went to the WWF, and I gave them something to take to the WWF. Like Stone Cold. Stone Cold was coming out of Chris Adams Wrestling School when I was the Texas Heavyweight Champion, and he used to watch my interviews with me and Iceman King Parsons, and he took a lot of the stuff that I used to say and took it to WWE and made a T-shirt out of it and made millions of dollars with it. And, of course, I wasn't upset about it because sometimes imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And I can remember years ago when I would say that to Jerry Lawler, you know, I'm going to open up a can of kick butt on your behind. Because I couldn't use profanity. I couldn't say I'm going to open up a can of whoop ass, and I just couldn't do that. But Stone Cold took it, and people, thought that it was his saying. Well, Rock, even way before that, when Rock came through my hands as Flex Kavana in Memphis, I used to talk Rock so bad. I used to talk about him so bad, and I used to say, you're going to make history. You're going to get your ass whooped in this same building the same way I whooped your daddy behind years ago. And that's got to be some kind of history. And I said, I'm going to kick your candy ass. And, that's where Rock get that from me. He took it up to WWE, made a T-shirt out of it, and made millions of dollars with it. And Booker T, Booker T took a lot of stuff from me because Booker T and his brother, I didn't train them to get into business, but I helped push them a lot into business. I made a call to Joe Pedicino for Global Wrestling. Of course, they went to Global Wrestling and became the Harlem Heat Express. And basically, Booker T took a lot of stuff from me. Basically, my catchphrase, I used to end every catchphrase with sucker, but I would call it mother sucker. Instead of saying, the F word, I would say, mother sucker. And Booker T took that and went to WWE, made a T-shirt, and made millions from it. So all of these guys know that they came through my hands and know that I am the original gangster in wrestling. New Jack took a lot of stuff from me, and of course he went over the edge with it doing the hardcore stuff. But for as New Jack was a complete carbon copy of me, and I don't mean to say that he stole everything from me. New Jack was probably just being himself, but a lot of the stuff that he did, I had did it way years before New Jack even thought about doing it, because I was wrestling.
Has any of these guys ever given you any credit or told you, like, in face-to-face or in person, that, they've given you any credit for
definitely.
For your part? Yeah?
Definitely. I mean, Stone Cold would acknowledge that whenever I would come to WWE. Stone Cold would acknowledge that because I used to feed Stone Cold when he came through Tennessee when I was working on top. Stone Cold came through Memphis at that point in time, and we were staying at the same hotel, and I went by Stone Cold's room, but then he was just Steve Austin, Stunning Steve. And I went by his hotel room, and he had a sack of potatoes and a bag of rice. And I go, hey, Steve, what are you doing? He said, I'm getting ready to cook my lunch. I said, what are you having? He said, well, I'm having potatoes and rice. I said, oh, that's cool. I said, well, what are you going to have for dinner? He said, potatoes and rice. And I said, look, come on, let's go to my house, because I had a house at that point in time, because by that time, Jerry Lawler had switched me heel, which is the only great thing that Jerry Lawler ever done for me, was recognizing the fact that I wasn't a babyface and he needed to make me a heel. And that's the best credit that I can give Jerry Lawler. He recognized that fact that I wasn't a babyface and that I would draw more money as a heel, and especially in the areas that we were wrestling, like Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, basically where you had a lot of, prejudiced white folks, and my job basically was to piss them off, and I did that very well because, just automatically, before I would even go out and start beating up on a guy, I would get the microphone and say, y'all know these people are paying me a lot of money to beat up this dude, but the truth of the matter is, I'll beat up this white boy for free. And automatically the heat would come in. And I was doing controversial interviews like that a long time ago, and I would call white people hunky. I would say, hey, I'm the black man that your mammy warned you about when you was a little hunky growing up. I was the type of dude that sit in front of a white guy and I'd slap him upside the head and make you do my homework. Then I'd slap you upside the head one more time and take your little lunch money. Then at the end of the day, I'd slap you upside the head one more time and then take your little girlfriend. And and I used to get heat with my mouth, Andrew. So, and believe it or not, 80% of the wrestling business, the success rate that guys have, is not from the performance, it's not from the wrestling moves, it's from the interviews, the gift for gab, in order to sell tickets. 80% of the wrestling business are guys that get over. If you look at it, The Rock, Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, John Cena, they weren't solid workers. They weren't solid wrestlers. What got them over was their charisma and their interviews. They had some of the best interviews going.
Huh.
So,
well, why? A lot of fans are listening and they're wondering, if you could talk and Stone Cold and The Rock and all these, like, why haven't they seen Brickhouse Brown in the WWF or WWE?
well, during the little short time that I competed there, and like I said, nothing that I tell you is false. You can go on and actually see that I competed there, and that actually I did a few jobs.
No, you have. I've seen, yeah. I could verify, and a lot of people know. You did wrestle for WWE for a period of time as enhancement, and you were on television as well.
Mm-hmm. And I did a few jobs, but most of the time in the house shows, they took care of me. I went over all the underneath heels, and they took care of me on television for a while.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what year was this? So we could paint the picture for the fans. What year did you first go to WWE?
I think it was around 88 and 89, because Big Cat Ernie Ladd is the one that is responsible for me getting booked and getting a run in the WWF, because he called up Vince at that point in time and told them that they should bring me in, and of course they liked what they saw. And Captain Lou Albano was a big fan of mine, and so was Pat Patterson, and they were grooming me to actually be a standout there. And only when I didn't agree to do certain things in the WWE, because I know a lot of people have heard about it, and the fact of the matter is, it is very true about the sexual harassment that they have in the WWE. They prey on a lot of the guys that they feel are marketable, and it goes much deeper than that, because at that point in time, I had been there for a while, and Pat Patterson was a huge fan of mine. And in Cincinnati, Ohio, in an elevator, he said, Brickhouse, he said, we can make you rich with the swipe of a pen. I said, yes, sir, I know. He said, we're going to give you a hell of a raise, and he said, you're going to make some money here. And he told me that they had a new character for me to play, which they were going to make me Mr. Chippendale, like a stripper, coming out and do my strip dance and do the tearaway deal. And I got my wrestling tights on, and I'm ready to kick butt. And he goes, can you pull that off? And I go, hell yeah, I can pull that off, because they do background checks, and they found out that I used to be a male stripper in college. I stripped for 4 years during college and made money.
So then you were ready, right? Okay.
Yeah. And he goes, you think you can pull that off? And I go, hell yeah, I can pull that off. And he said, well, there's only one problem. I go, what's that? He said, you have to come to my house for some dress rehearsal. And then Pat Patterson proceeded to try to unbuckle my belt buckle in the elevator and give me a blowjob. And he said, of course you have to come to my house for some undress rehearsal also. So at that point in time, he was the vice president, and there was no way I could do anything to him. It just shocked the hell out of me. And I had to wrestle Moondog that night. So I actually just, when those elevator doors opened up, you thought I had jets shooting out of my butt getting out of that elevator. And I went in the ring and I worked Moondog, and I can remember paying for my own flight home. And it just disturbed me so bad. And I called up every wrestler that I knew that was a friend of mine and told them exactly what had happened. And I was good friends with a lot of the top guys. I was good friends with Macho Man. I was good friends with Ric Flair. I was good friends with Big Cat Ernie Ladd. And they all told me the same thing. They said, Brickhouse, how bad do you want it? I said, well, yeah, I want this very bad. And he said, well, sometimes, you got to play the game in order to, he said, I'm not telling you, this is what Ernie Ladd told me, I'm not telling you to do it, I'm not telling you not to do it. He said, it just depends on how far you want to go with it in your career. And that's the way he left it. And Ric Flair told me this. He said, well, Brickhouse, he said, let's go over it. He said, you're probably going to make, about $200,000 a year. And he said, Pat Patterson is a catcher. That's the only thing he want to do is just, go down on you and have sex with you. And he said, let's go over this. $200,000 a year. He said, a head job. He said, well, he said, you know what, Brickhouse? I don't see too much wrong with that picture.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, true story. He said, I don't see too much wrong with that picture. And all the guys basically told me it was my decision to make. And it disturbed me so bad that I called up Linda McMahon, because at that point in time, this is how high that they had expectations for me, because I could pick up the phone and call Vince, and I could call Linda. And at that point in time, I called Linda. I came up with some sorry-ass excuse that I was going back to college to get a second degree, and I needed to, to go better myself, and I would like to return to the WWF sometime down the line when I have completed, doing what I needed to do. And she said, Brickhouse, we have some great plans for you, and you did a good job, and you're welcome back to the WWF at any time. And I left. And when I left there, I went back to the Mid-South. I went back to work for Bill Watts. And then I went back to work for Fritz Von Erich. And I started going out of the country to Japan and Mexico. And I was still able to make my 6 figures a year and make a good living.
Wow. But you never spoke to Vince about it? Or, I know it's probably not easy to go to head management and kind of be like a rat, or saying, hey, this guy is, come on to me, or vice president, it's not an easy situation for you to be in, especially a young man in the business, and you want to make something of yourself. So. Well,
I didn't go to Vince because, to be honest with you, like I said before, I was smart enough to know that they had to know what was going on around that, and if I would have went ahead over Pat Patterson, who had no other boss except for Vince, then I probably wouldn't have a job there. And basically, I knew that he would have taken Pat Patterson's side over me at any time because I was replaceable. As a matter of fact, Coco Beware did take my spot. As a matter of fact, The Rock did take my spot. And it was just some of those things that I asked Tony Gurria once. I said, man, why can't they just go on my skill and how well I wrestle in the ring in order for me to get a push? And I'll never forget it, Andrew. Tony Gurria looked at me and said, well, Brickhouse, sometimes the best players don't always make the team. And I'll never forget that.
Wow.
He goes, sometimes it's not who you know, it's who you blow. And those words came out of Tony Gurria's mouth.
I'm not picking on Coco or The Rock or guys you're saying that took your spot, but are you saying like a lot of guys in the business, if they wanted to advance themselves in WWE, they have to play the game, as you say, like they have to do the sexual stuff or whatever
of course,
they would ask for?
Of course, yes, and I'm not biting my tongue. Of course. Now, I'm not calling out names about who did this and who did what because I wasn't in the same room with everybody when things were going on.
Yeah. But
the formula for success in the WWF at that point in time, yes, you had to play the game. And, you had guys that they thought were marketable that they didn't bother with like that they just let go out and do their thing and make money. But there are young guys like myself that they preyed upon that they had to do the game. And I just remember when Rock left Memphis, basically, Pat Patterson became a fan of The Rock, and Ron Simmons used to call me, and every time he would go, well, they're going to put Rock in the Nation of Domination with us. And the next time he would call me and say, well, they're going to make Rock the Intercontinental Champion now, and he don't even get dressed with us anymore. He ride with Pat Patterson. Well, they're going to make Rock the World Champion now, and he don't even get dressed around us anymore. He gets dressed with Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson. So I do know that Pat Patterson flew to Miami to watch Rock train personally, and I do know that Rock made $3 million, during his third year in the WWE when he got hot. And I do know that Pat Patterson was instrumental in that career. And I can't say specifically, but based on the formula of what they do, Rock had everything that they desired that their workers look like, that they preyed upon. He had the look, he had the body, he had the charisma, and he was marketable. And, of course, if you weren't marketable, if you didn't have the talent, they wouldn't have approached you with that at all because, no matter how much you roll manure and crap and some powdered sugar, still don't make it a freaking donut.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yep. But, yes, you definitely have to play the game. And even today, it goes much, much, much more deeper than that now, which I will, get into a little bit later on certain things the more as we go, because I would like to really be like a correspondent on False Comebacks, and I would like to be on weekly if I can, because like I said, you can't take 35 years of wrestling and put it on just a few minutes, on a talk show and be done with it. So, yes, I would definitely like to cover a lot of stuff, and mainly one of the main things about the WWE now is basically they have this secret sex society, which a lot of people don't believe that it exists. A lot of people don't believe it because it's something like out of the movies, but it's a group of people, and they are masked. They are all over the world, and it's called the Illuminati. And I'm sure people have done research on the Illuminati, because you see all these rappers that are in the Illuminati, like Lil Wayne and Birdman and Eminem and Dr. Dre, and then Beyonce and Jay-Z and Kanye West. They're all involved in the Illuminati. And on the sports side, you got LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. They're all involved in this secret sex society that you have to be involved in if you're going to get the $1 million contract. And yes, John Cena, yes, Randy Orton, yes, Undertaker, yes, anybody else that is getting a good push and has made those $1 million contracts have to be involved in the Illuminati. If you're not involved in the Illuminati, you're not going to get that super push on that TV. And that's not to say that everybody in there that works for them is involved in the Illuminati. Everybody is not wanted. Only a select few are wanted. But you will know the ones that do, because they let you know it themselves by throwing up those signs and throwing up the language, and you can just tell. If you do your research, you will know what to look for. And I don't blame any of these guys, because everybody have their price. And my deal is, it just wasn't for me, because, like I said before, there's a lot of things that I basically don't agree with what they do, and I just didn't believe like it was right for me. It wasn't a good fit for me. And I don't knock anybody with whatever they want to do, whatever turns them on. I don't knock anybody for grabbing the brass ring and going for the gusto whatever way that they can go. I just know it wasn't for me. I was content to make my little six figures every year. I didn't have to have the $1 million contract. I didn't have to have the super push. I was content just to do my thing and go out as Brickhouse and do my little spiel. And if I could make a good living, I was happy. And that's why I started going to Japan and Mexico. And everywhere I went, I was always used on top. I was never that much of a mid-carder, except for when I was in WWE. And when I started out, of course, my first 5 years, I was mid-card. But I've never been the curtain jerker. And not to say that that's what some people have a destiny of being curtain jerkers, but the bottom line is they have the most important match of the night, the opening match, because it gets the crowd warmed up and prepared for what's to come later on. So if you have a dull first match, then it usually dictates that the whole night is going to be dull. But that's needless to say. I've never had to work first and second matches. I've always been in the middle or on top. And that's just the way it was for me. I wasn't any better than anybody. It's just that I had what they were looking for to draw money. And when they gave me a chance to run with the ball, I did exactly that. I drew money.
Wow. Folks, all you guys subscribe right now to our YouTube channel. We'll definitely have Brickhouse Brown more. I definitely want to get into more of Jerry Lawler next time. And before we go... Oh,
well, I can tell you some things now, just real briefly. You know, Jerry basically, like I said, has a brilliant mind for the business. He came up with a lot of gimmicks that have made people money. I mean, he came up with the Fabs, him and Jackie Fargo. He came up with Kamala's gimmick. The man has a brilliant mind for wrestling. I can't take that from him. And the man know how to draw money. And basically that night when he decided to switch me heel, I didn't like it at first, but then he said, we're going to do it out of a referee deal. And we used to slow cook things back then. We didn't do it for a few weeks, and we actually did the referee deal for a few months. And basically what happened was I became a troubleshooting referee where I would just referee the big title matches that were going on. And then one night with him and Austin Idol for the Continental Championship is when I turned heel. And I can remember you could hear a pin drop in the building in the Mid-South Coliseum because nobody expected it. After 3 months, they just knew that Austin Idol was going to lose that belt because they had a troubleshooting referee there that would call it down the middle, and you couldn't get anything over on me because they had fixed it to where I got hurt in the business. In order to stay working and making money in the wrestling business, if I wanted to stay in, I had to referee, and that's when I became troubleshooting referee B. Brown. And we did that for like 3 months, and it just worked tremendously because the first match that I had with Jerry Lawler was a shoe shine kit match. Whoever lost the match, yeah, it was ridiculous now, but it drew money. We drew like about $30,000 that Monday night, which was back then, that was a huge cake when you run a weekly show.
Can I take a guess, Brick? You lost the match.
No.
Oh,
No. See, you can't have when people were shocked that I turned on Jerry Lawler, then the steam wouldn't have built up if I would have lost the first match. No, I won the first match. I used the shoe shine kit to actually knock Jerry Lawler out. And, of course, he didn't shine my shoes in the ring. I actually won the belt my first time out.
Oh, okay.
I won the belt that night. And, of course, you know, I would completely put my spin on the belt. I never wore the belt. I would always drag it on the ground. And Lance Russell would go, "Why are you dragging that belt, Brickhouse?" I said, "Because it represents nothing but country bunking, chicken chasing, hillbilly hicks like yourself. And this belt is just something that I took from another white guy like I used to take stuff from you in high school. And Jerry Lawler is just another white boy that I took this belt from." And that's the way people thought that I was actually prejudiced and that I didn't like white people, which was not true because I have a biracial daughter. I was married to a white female, my second marriage, and that is not true. But the character that I played, you would think that, you know, I was a Black Panther or something, and that's basically was what the character that I was playing was basically militant, you know. But Jerry Lawler is responsible for that, and we did real good with that. We drew money, and the problem that Jerry Lawler and I had was that when they tried to tear me down, they started bringing in these guys from Texas, and that's when Jerry Jarrett and Fritz Von Erich had joined up, and they brought in this guy, Awesome Kong, and they wanted me to put him over, and at that time, I was the only black on the card, and I called Jerry. I said, "Well, we're bringing in these guys from Texas." I said, "Who am I working?" He said, "You're working Awesome Kong." And I go, "Well, what's the finish?" He said, "Well, you're going to put him over, and we got to get these guys hot." And I go, "Well, I'm just getting hot, and you're going to take the only black on the card, and you're going to beat him in Memphis, which is 70% black?" I said, "I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it." And at that point in time, that was the first time I actually refused to put somebody over because I just felt like it wasn't conducive for my career. In other words, Andrew, I let them build me up, but I wasn't going to let them tear me down.
Absolutely.
And I just said, well, if I do the job for him, I said, "Are we going to work a program or what?" He go, "Oh, no, he's going to go in and he's going to work Max Payne." And so I say, "So you're going to use me to get him over to go work and make money with somebody else, and I don't get to make a dime." I said, "I'm not going to do it, brother. I'm not showing up at the Coliseum." And I go, "Jerry, if you were me, what would you do?" And he said, "Well, I guess you're right, Brickhouse. I guess you're finished up then." I said, "I guess I am." And that was the last I talked to him for a few years. And then I was wrestling in Florida for Eddie Graham. And Jerry Jarrett saw me and saw what I was doing in Florida. And I was working with Kevin Sullivan and Superstar Billy Graham. And we just basically, I was drawing money for Eddie back then. And Jerry Jarrett saw me and said, "Well, I'd like you to come back to Memphis." And that's when I went back to Memphis, and me and Lawler had another program, drew money. And it just became the point to where he couldn't control me, and basically Lawler has a memory like an elephant, and he holds grudges. And even to this day, you know, Lawler and I are enemies because I never let it be known that I cared for Lawler pretty much, because I was always talking about him, because it's not that I'm gay or anything, but I used to talk so bad about Lawler on the shoot side because God blessed him with tremendous wrestling ability, tremendous brain for the wrestling business. But as far as being a man and having a good anatomy downstairs, you know what I mean? He should have been born a girl. Because, I mean, if everybody out there know what I'm talking about, is that Jerry Lawler has a little wee-wee, and he has a little wee-wee that my son, when he was 7 years old, was bigger than Lawler. You know, so.
What did you think of Lawler's heart attack on Raw a few years ago? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the heart attack 2 years ago, I thought, okay, now maybe finally with this man coming so close to death, it might change his outlook on life. He might not be so hateful and being the racist fucking ass that he is. He might actually change his disposition from him coming so close to death. But actually, it made him worse. I mean, to me, it's hard to kill a demon. You just can't kill a demon. And yes, I am saying that. I didn't wish him death, but to be honest with you, if he would have died, I wouldn't have lost any sleep.
Wow.
So if that tells you how much I felt about it, then yeah, you know, I just wouldn't have lost any sleep, because all of them, you know, I mean, I made money. I was one of the highest paid blacks that came through Memphis at that time. I mean, one of the highest paid. The only person that probably made more money than me at that point in time was probably Big Cat Ernie Ladd. He was the only one. Kamala didn't make more money than me. Rocky Johnson didn't make more money than me. Coco Beware didn't make any more money than me. Nobody else but probably Big Cat Ernie Ladd made more money than me in Tennessee working for Jerry Jarrett, because I made them pay me. You know.
I was going to mention Junkyard Dog, but I don't think he worked for Jerry Jarrett, did he?
Yes. During his last brief career when he was on the way out, yes, he did. Oh, I worked the program with Junkyard Dog, and it got over. And yes, it did. Yes, it did. And that was one of the main things, too, because our program, of course, was under Jerry Lawler. You know, he was the main event. But around Memphis and Louisville and Nashville, where you had a lot of black people, we drew, you know, great business, because then we were running like 2 towns a night. One group would follow Junkyard Dog and the Fabs, and one group would follow Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. And we ran two shows a night, and our towns were kicking all of them towns in the ass. And that's one of the problems, too. And to me, I never understood why certain guys on top would give a damn who's throwing the freaking money, so long as somebody was drawing the money. Who gave a damn? But these guys' egos were so big that they had made so much money that they didn't care about who was drawing the money. They wanted to just be the ones to draw the money. And that was one of the problems in Memphis, because you only had so high you could go as a babyface. Of course, you had Lawler number 1, Bill Dundee number 2, then you had Jeff Jarrett, then you had Dutch Mantell. So anybody that came in as a babyface had no spot to go to except for mid-card or first or second match. So you made no money as a babyface. And I started recognizing that. So when Lawler wanted to switch me heel, I jumped at the chance, because I knew then that I would be working with him or Jeff or Bill Dundee, and I worked heel and I worked all of them and worked programs with them that drew money. So no matter what they say about me, that I had a bad attitude and I was hard to do business with, which is what he did. He blocked me out of going to WWE one time when I was getting ready to go up again. Jerry Lawler and Johnny Ace blocked me out because they were good buddies. Johnny Ace and Bruce Pritchard. They blocked me out because they were good friends with Jerry Lawler. And Jerry Lawler told them the fact, well, Brickhouse was so hard to do business with us. We put the belt on him, and he left with the belt, which is true. I did. I left with the Continental belt one night, and I sent the belt back COD because they owed me money. He always tell the fact that I walked away with the belt, you know, because I didn't work Jeff Jarrett that night, but he never say the back, oh, well, we owed him $300, and we didn't pay him, and That's why he left.
It's the same thing Ric Flair did with Jim Herd when they wanted him to lose the belt, but Flair didn't have a problem jobbing, and Flair publicly has said that. But the problem was he wanted his deposit for the belt, so he took the belt to New York.
Oh, I see. Well.
So, I mean, like, nobody said what I'm trying to say is like nobody, people overlook the fact that Flair did it, but I mean, it's the circumstance. If you're just leaving that one part of the story out, as you're saying that you just took the belt and went, but not the circumstance. I think that's what you're alluding to, correct? Exactly.
Because Big Cat on the Lad told me if you have an agreement and a guarantee with them, which I had a guarantee with them, my guarantee was for $1,200 a week, and basically I, listened to Ernie because he was like my agent and my mentor, and he told me, Brickhouse, if they short you $1 or $100, do not go out and wrestle, because if you go out and wrestle and they have shorted you on your money, then why should they pay you a guarantee? And that made total sense to me. So one night they made the mistake of giving me my check before I had to go out and work Jeff Jarrett. And I looked at my check, and it was $300 short. So without telling anybody, I packed my bag, took the belt and put it into my bag, jumped in my car, and went home. And Jared called me the next day and said, what is the problem? And I go, Jared, do not question my intelligence. You signed the checks. You know exactly what the damn problem is. The problem is my check is $300 short. And he goes, oh, is that all? He said, well, I can make that right. I said, Jerry, it shouldn't have been wrong. We're all in this business to make money. I got kids, and they got a habit that I can't break. They love to eat every day. And I don't care about being a champion. I don't care about being a superstar. But what I do care about is how much money I make. Because he was telling me, we're going to make you a black superstar. We're going to push you to the moon, and you're going to be my black champion, and yada, 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 yada. And at that point in time, I told Jared, I said, I don't care about any of that. Pay me. That's all I need you to do is pay me. And he said, of course, you won't come back to TV Saturday morning and do business the right way, will you? I said, now you want me to come back to TV and drop the belt on TV just so that you thinking that I can do business the right way. I said, when you the one that didn't do business the right way in the first place. So in order for me to be cool with you and then get my money, I got to come back and drop the belt on television. I said, I'll get back with you in a few days and let you know what I'm going to do. And that's when I sent the belt back COD, and I made it $200 for more than what they owed me, $500. And that's what I got out of them. I got my $300 plus the $2. And he never forgot that. And he called me up, and actually he thought it was pretty brilliant. He said, you know what? You'll never wrestle for me again. He said, but that was a brilliant move that you did. And he said, I got to admire for you, Brickhouse. When you're on point, he said, you're on point. But when you go left field, you go left field. And that of course, Jared brought me back in a couple of years later, because no matter how much they said that I was hard to do business with, the part of the business that they loved is that I put asses in the seat. So, and they couldn't get over that part. That part of the fact they loved, we had a love-hate relationship. They loved to have me on the freaking cards, but they hated to fucking pay me. Excuse me about that, but anyway, you get my point. I mean, I still get upset to this day with the things that, and I mean the money that I should have made. I made great money working for them, but now that I think about it, I should have been more demanding, because I remember guys like Austin Idol and Handsome Jimmy Valiant coming in, and my deal is I was always smart enough to keep count of the house. Ernie always taught me that whenever you're working a program on an angle with somebody, always ask what the house is. Like, say, for instance, if we went in on a Monday night and the house was like $12,000, then you work your program on TV that Saturday, you go back to Memphis that Monday, then you see a little more people and you ask, what's the house? And they go, 15. So you know then that your angle is drawing. And then I would look at my payoff, what they paid me on a $12,000 house. Then I would look at the payoff on the $15,000 house, and I would write that down, so that whenever we started doing big money, because when I turned babyface, when it was the right time for me to turn back babyface, of course, out of the stud stable with Robert Fuller, that was one of the biggest angles that ever came through because we actually drew $60,000 for like 4 to 5 weeks straight until I actually got to Robert Fuller. I had to go through the whole stud stable until I got to Robert Fuller, and the house did not drop. We drew $60,000 every week. We didn't have the big marketing machine that these guys have now. We couldn't plug it on the cable. We couldn't do the marketing. We did our shit on Saturday mornings, and then that Monday night in Memphis, we did it. We didn't prolong anything. We slow cooked it, and if the people bought it, you knew it from the house. If they farted on it, you knew it from the house. And needless to say, I still had some gate receipt records in Memphis in the Coliseum. I can remember Rocky Johnson and Jerry Lawler against me and Cowboy Don Bass. We drew about a $70,000 house. Now, that's small money compared to what WWE is drawing now. But back then, Andrew, if you know what I'm saying, just without the cable TV.
Well, that was big money in the 80s.
Exactly. You know, and so I never had any problems of being one of the guys that would draw money. The problem was I got this reputation from Lawler and them from working that territory that I was a troubleshooter and undependable and hard to do business with. And I was never hard to do business with. I didn't mind putting anybody over. As a matter of fact, that's one of the problems that I had with one of the Gilberts, Doug Gilbert. Doug Gilbert and I are not really friends to this day because I wouldn't put him over on television because I just didn't feel like it was conducive for my career. Because at that point in time, I was very hot in Memphis, and in order to keep your steam rolling, you didn't see Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold or anybody else doing jobs on TV. And at that point in time, Memphis was one of the first, matter of fact, the first live television, wrestling television show ever, way before Monday Night Raw. So I wasn't going to do a job on Memphis TV and then go out in the black community and around Memphis, which was 70% black, and do a job for Doug Gilbert. Doug Gilbert wasn't the name that Eddie Gilbert was. So I didn't feel like it was conducive for my career, so I refused to put Doug Gilbert over.
It wasn't a personal thing, but you're looking at your career long term. You don't want to just, it's like getting all the chips and saying, oh, okay, you basically get killed off if you do the wrong job on TV and everybody says, oh, Brickhouse is not, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I get you.
Yeah. But the following week, though, Andrew, I did a job for Gorgeous George on the TV. And the reason why I did the job for Gorgeous George, because it was tastefully done. It didn't hurt me. It just set up an angle for us to work that Monday night because I had control of my my matches at that point in time, and Gorgeous George was working me on television. I said, you know what? I think you should go over on me today on TV. So we're going to work Monday night. Let's try to create some interest. And I put him over. I mean, he pinned me in the ring, 1, 2, 3.
Which Gorgeous George are you referring to?
Gorgeous George Jr. I mean, this is one that came through Memphis at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a gorgeous. It was a Gorgeous George that came through Memphis at that point in time, and I put him over, and Doug Gilbert got pissed. He goes, "Oh, I see now. How the hell you gonna put Gorgeous George over, and you wouldn't put me over?" I said, "Because I know what's gonna happen Monday night in our angle. I'm going to go in the Mid-South Coliseum. I'm going to whoop Gorgeous George's ass in front of my people. That's exactly what's going to happen." And that's exactly what we did. And the only other time I refused to do a job was when I was the Texas champion. And I refused to do a job for Gorgeous Gary Young. That's why. And that's how I lost the Texas belt. I mean, when they asked me to put Gorgeous Gary Young over, I go, well, why should I do that? I said, everybody in their mammy has beat Gary Young. So you want to establish Gary Young now as being an ass kicker and get him over by having him defeat me for the Texas title. Are we going to work a program? And that's the main thing that I asked. Are we going to work a program? And even if I wasn't going to get the belt back, Andrew, so long as I worked the program to make money off of it, instead of just dropping the belt and him going to work with somebody else, that was a no-no to me. I needed to make money off of that. So I refused to do it because they told me he was going to go on and work with one of those hot doing Brian Adidas. And I said, there's no way I'm going to drop the belt to Gary Young for him to go work with Brian Adidas with the Texas belt, and I'm out of the picture. I'm not doing it. So while I was in the shower, they had Bronco Lubitsch go to my briefcase and actually steal the belt out of my briefcase and take it and put it on Gary Young, and they had Gary Young go on TV, and they came up with some bull crap that he had beat me for the belt in Brownsville, Texas. And I came out of the shower, and I seen my belt gone, and I saw Gary Young doing an interview on the TV with Mercer, with one of the guys that was the commentator. I don't remember who it was, but they said that he had beat me in Brownsville, Texas.
Wow,
and I remember,
some arena show.
Yeah, and I remember yelling. I remember yelling out, Andrew, yeah, but you'll never show any damn film footage on it. That's for sure. The people will never see it. So I had to make history of being the first guy to ever lose a belt while he was washing his ass in the shower.
And we're going to end that right now. That's the perfect time to end this interview. And I cannot wait. I hope you'll be on the show more often. And, folks, subscribe to our YouTube channel, False Comeback. Share this video, like this video, comment. Brickhouse Brown, ladies and gentlemen. And you could, where could fans catch you if they wanted to, or promoters for that matter, if they wanted to book you?
Well, I'm located out of Jackson, Mississippi, and I don't know. Should I give my phone number to you, or should I just? How would I work that out? You know, I'm not good at stuff promotion deal, but just to let you know, before we give any information about booking me, I need to make them want to book me. And Andrew, we got some more stuff to cover. I mean, because there's a ton of celebrities. Now, I mean, I haven't always walked around with a halo over my head. I have been a bad boy, and I've been guilty of a lot of things. Some things that they accuse me of, I'm not guilty of. But the things that I am guilty of, I'm man enough to own up to it and take the heat that goes with it. And I haven't always been the Brickhouse that I am now. I mean, there's been the Brickhouse that went through the drug phase, you know, and because drugs was all around us, everybody was doing them. But a lot of the guys won't admit to doing them. But, I mean, I've gotten high with Tommy Rich. I've gotten high with some of the top names, and I'll reveal those names later on. I won't just give that away now. But not just in the wrestling business. I'm talking about I went to college with Bo Jackson and Charles Barkley, and, I mean, I've gotten high with all of those guys. I've had sexual orgies with these guys. And, yes, I have even had a deal to where me, Muhammad Ali, and this guy by the name of the Snowman that wrestled for Mid-South Wrestling briefly, when Bill Watts brought in Muhammad Ali in the Superdome, he took a liking to me. Mm-hmm. He took a liking to me and asked me, you know, did I do okay with the girls? And I said, I do fine. And just to make this story brief, and I'll finish telling it later on, but he had me go out on Bourbon Street and get some girls and bring them up to his presidential suite. And then we started having, you know, an orgy with the girls. And I'm one of the few guys that actually saw Muhammad Ali getting down. And to be honest with you, I could not perform that night because I was so in awe and marking out on Muhammad Ali that when the girl was busy trying to work on me, I was too fixated on Muhammad Ali. I was kept zeroing in on Muhammad Ali. Not that I was trying to watch him or look at him and see how well endowed he was, but how many people get to see Muhammad Ali get a blowjob or do all of this or whatever before he became, you know, with the shakes and everything. And this is a true story. So I'll give people more details about that. I can tell people about dealing with the Bionic Woman when I wrestled in Portland, Oregon. You know, I even, you know, kicked it with the Bionic Woman, and I'll go more details into that with Lindsey Wagner. I did some of the people from the Young and the Restless when I was out in California. There's a lot of kiss and tell stories that I got to tell. There's a lot of drug tales that I got to tell with some people that you would be very surprised on, and I am definitely going to tell their names because there's nothing they can do about it because it's all true. So they can't come back and say, Brickhouse, you're mentioning my name. And so, well, yeah, did you not do that? Okay. So I haven't had any problems from anybody thus far because they all know that whatever I tell that comes out of my mouth, if I tell about it, then it is true. I don't tell about things that I've heard. I don't tell about things that I speculate on. Andrew, I tell about things that I have experienced with these people. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and all the juicy tidbits, if you want to know the juicy tidbits and you haven't watched any of my shoot interviews on High Spots, then I suggest everybody tune in because if you don't know me by my name, you will know me, and that's Brickhouse Brown because I'm going to tell Andrew anything that he would like to know, and you guys and gentlemen, and you better tune in and get the whole truth and nothing but the truth because I am going to tell it all. I'm going to tell about the sexual conquest. I'm going to tell about the drug fest. I'm going to tell about having a 3-day binge with Rick James for 3 days at his home in Buffalo. I am going to tell it all and just, yes, believe this. It's all true. And, Andrew, we can go into other details about me refusing to do jobs because there's a few more. There's a few more with me and Iceman against the Bun Eggs in the Cotton Bowl with 21,000 people. I refused to put them over because ESPN was there and we were going to lose a lead town match anyway. So I will tell you guys the details about how I held Fritz them up at the gate for money, and they had to go get our money before the matches started, and we got our money because, hell, we was leaving town anyway. We were going to lose a lead town match. So the Bun Eggs wasn't going anywhere. So they were gonna fire us. Well, we weren't getting fired. Our deal was just up. And I'll tell the deal about how I turned Ric Flair down of going to the WCW, which is one of the worst mistakes I ever made because I actually was supposed to be on that crew when Ted Turner brought Jim Crockett out. I was supposed to be on that crew, but because Jerry Lawler made a bunch of promises to me and lured me to come to Tennessee and work on top of them, I wasn't in that crew that went on to WCW and stayed for 10 years and made millions of dollars. I was supposed to be on that crew, but I wasn't. And when Bill Watts took over as general manager, they wanted to bring me in. And instead of Ron Simmons being the first black world champion, it would have been me, Brickhouse, because I took Junkyard Dog's spot when he walked out on Bill Watts to go to New York and work for Vince. Ernie Ladd convinced him to bring me in to the Mid-South. That's how I got the job in the Mid-South because Dog walked out on Bill Watts. And Ernie Ladd was the booker at that time, him and Bill Dundee. And Dundee knew me from Tennessee. So when they needed another black to come in to take Dog's place, guess who got the spot? Me.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of things, and you know what? How about, would you take questions from a lot of our listeners and our subscribers? Like we encourage, if you would, like we encourage a lot of the subscribers, comment below, ask some questions, and we'll take those questions and we'll ask Brickhouse Brown. Does that sound
Definitely.
good?
Definitely.
Oh, great.
Definitely. You know, it's such an honor for me to be on False Comebacks because you've had a slew of wrestlers come on, superstars, and I'm just glad to be a part of it, Andrew, and I'm glad that you thought that my name was good enough to have on there, and I'm really honored to be on False Comebacks. And
we're honored to have you, Brickhouse. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you on as a friend of the show, and we'll do some more interactive ones with a lot of our listeners, a lot of our subscribers. They send in some questions, and we'll have a more interactive show next time.
Well, I thank you, and all you people out there, just be sure and catch us. And I'm sure Andrew is going to give you the dates and time that I'm going to be back on the show, and I can't wait. And I just want everybody to know there's no shame in my game. I tell you when I'm up and when I'm down. I'm going through a very nasty, nasty divorce, and I mean, I'm really doing a job for my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife. And Andrew, this is really saving me right now. I mean, right now, being on False Comebacks is giving me a purpose and a reason, and it's helping me out. Matter of fact, it's saving my life, and we'll get into details about that because it is very nasty, and it's what I'm going through right now. And, Andrew, you couldn't have called me at a better time because I needed this. This is something that I just didn't want to do. This is something that I have to do. I need to do. In order to keep the Brickhouse Brown brand going, I have to do this false comeback deal. So it's not like I'm just doing this out of graciousness of my heart. I'm doing this because I need to. So when I'm in need, then you are definitely going to get the raw, edgy, ratchet, trifling, I mean, whatever you might want to call it, that's what you're going to get from me. And I'm just glad that you accepted me to be on this.
I'm very happy that you're on our show, and I really appreciate those kind words. And we'll just send it off right now. We'll see you next time, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Brickhouse.
Thank you, Andrew.